Thank you very much, Barry. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends, and fellow licensees of the Grand Bahama Port Authority. Today is a beautiful day in Freeport. The sun is shining, it's not humid, blue skies. It's really a pleasant and beautiful day to be out and about. And every time one of these days comes along, I'm always reminded why I'm here and why I've chosen to be here for the last 35 years. Freeport is, at the end of the day, as much as we bitch and complain about things that are always going wrong here, a really beautiful and wonderful place to be. Most of us love being here. We enjoy being here. We've raised our families here. We've embedded ourselves here. We've invested everything that we have. We have our homes here. We have our gardens here. We enjoy the canals, the beaches. We enjoy our friends. We've enjoyed seeing people growing up together. It's really a beautiful place to live. And at the end of the day, I'd like to remind all of you, as all of you already know, that Freeport belongs to the licensees. It belongs to all 3,500 of us, and by extension, the thousands of employees that we have. It is ours, and we have a responsibility to take care of what belongs to us, our home. And that is why it is a great pleasure to see all of you gathered here today, to see the efforts that have been led by Barry Malcolm and the other team of the executives, trying to put together a coalition, a collaboration of licensees to take back what belongs to us. It's high time that the licensees stepped up to the plate and fought for their rights. Otherwise, by slow and imperceptible means, as has been occurring year after year, decade after decade, incessantly, clandestinely, and sometimes very openly, by both the F&M and the PLP, we are being stripped of every little benefit and advantage that we ought to be enjoying and experiencing under the matrix of our governance, of our administration, of the jurisprudence, of our economic and social order, which is the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement. We must never forget that this is what underpins the very existence of licensees, the government, the Port Authority, and the employees and residents living in Freeport. If it was not for the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement having been entered into since 1955, there would be no Freeport. So let us not forget what we are all about. We are here, part of a process, a long process, to create a community, to create an effective economic area in the Bahamas that should far surpass, that should hum as a beautiful example to the rest of the Bahamas of what could be. For some reason, the F&M and the PLP have repeatedly, either it's through ignorance, either it's through lack of understanding, not appreciating the context of the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement, not understanding what we're all about, not living here, not coming from here, not having a visceral understanding of what Freeport is all about. They do it either intentionally or unintentionally. They continue to roll us back, to put obstacles in our way. And as an example, I mean, the F&M lost the election in Freeport on the last occasion, lost so many seats, because they did everything they could to create more problems for us during a recessionary period. I mean, with the customs and with licensing and with exchange control, every little thing they did, they failed to understand how it dramatically affected this very fragile, this very artificial economic construct, which Edward St. George did recognize. And what Edward did throughout his life, throughout his chairmanship of the Port Authority, was to empower Freeport, was to promote hope, aspirations, ambition, was to always project a positive image, even though it may not have been the truth, but he was all about making it appear to be so. I mean, when the container port invested $90 million, $90 million didn't come in and sit in Freeport. $75 million of it was purchasing those big cranes from abroad. maybe 5 or 6 million stuck here, but when he gave his speeches, it was $90 million that was being invested in Freeport. He gave hope. He gave everybody something to live towards, to look forward to. I need a napkin or something. I'll use yours. But thank you anyway. So Freeport is all about the dream of what Freeport can be, not about what it is. It's what Freeport can be, and Freeport can be the beautiful garden city, the magic city, the place where there's full of energy, where everybody has aspirations, where we are looking to a better future, where we are all working together. And unfortunately, for decades, there has been, an intended fracturing of the licensees. Unfortunately, the Port Authority, and Edward is to blame for this as well, was never promoted as an effective partner in the governance, the direction, and the future of Freeport. And it is, as again I say, it is wonderful to see all of you here today, wonderful to hear the chat in the marketplace, wonderful to be reading what's going on in the newspapers, to meet with Barry and the executives, and to finally feel for the first time that the licensees are understanding that if we don't all come together, there will be nothing left to fight for anymore. And the new PLP government, as much as they promised so much for Freeport, and they won these seats that they now have, they are doing worse than the FNN did in the previous 5 years to bring Freeport to its knees. I am satisfied that it is the intention of the government, by extension the FNN in the past as well, to end the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement, to bring to an end the benefits enjoyed by licensees. Because objectively looked at, that is what they are doing. And the new Customs Management Act, the regulations under it, are another example of the nails that they are driving into Freeport's coffin. And it is our job as licensees, because we have so much of a vested interest in seeing Freeport succeed, in seeing our home kept nicely the way we want it, to fight this. And so I'm very glad that the Chamber instructed my firm to give an opinion on the legality or otherwise of these new customs management regulations. But they're not new. Every year, or every other year, customs, and customs, let's pause for a minute, customs duty exemptions is the single biggest long-term benefit that accrues to licensees. It is the one benefit under the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement that exists until the year 2054. And it is not, and this needs clarifying as well, it is not as if in the year 2054, everything that was brought in duty-free, as many of the customs people will tell you, and some stupidly in government think, that in the year 2054, customs duties suddenly become payable on everything that has been brought in during the last 99 years. That is why it is so stupid, inane, perverse, and downright infantile on the part of customs and the government to require you every time you want to destroy an item that's been brought in duty-free or duty-exempt, that you have to pay the duty on it, or burn it, or destroy it at the dump and have a customs, and what's more, pay a customs officer to watch you destroy it. How insane is that? Stupid. So, once an item is brought in duty-free or duty-exempt, it is forever duty-exempt. And that principle, that's not just Fred Smith speaking. Mr. Justice Ganpat Singh, in the case of Hepburn and Pruden and the Attorney General, said this: once you bring in the items duty-free, duty-exempt, they are forever duty-exempt. They don't suddenly become duty-payable, like when you sell, once the house is built duty-free, and they had this figment that only employees of licensees could own the house and could sell it once. God knows where that concept came from, because it's not in the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement. Then duty was payable. And so for about 30 years, everybody was paying duty on houses that were resold once they were resold from the licensee or the employee of the licensee. Well, thankfully, since that case that Robert Adams and I did, that has been debunked, and duty is no longer payable on houses being sold. Once they're built duty-free, they are forever duty-free. Just as your car is when you bring it in. The nonsense going on with customs now, harassing people, hounding people, watching people like the SS Gestapo, and dragging people in and persecuting them is another issue that should be addressed by the licensees. So again, I emphasize how wonderful it is to see my friends, some former clients, some current clients, some former adversaries, the Grand Bahama Port Authority here. Everybody seems to be awakening to the need to protect our home. It's a beautiful home. I'm sure all of you will agree. And it's a day like this, we should all be out enjoying this beautiful Freeport and this weather, rather than be stuck in a concrete box, arguing with the government. It's high time that, I'm glad to see Sir Jack here, and Sarah, and others from the Port Authority, young Mr. Rowe. His dad used to be the deputy controller of customs, and the controller. And I'm happy to say that during his tenure, there was some semblance of common sense in the approach to administration of customs matters in Freeport. But lunacy seems to have become embedded in the recent mindset of the government. I'm old enough now. Yesterday was my birthday. I'm 40 again, so I can say whatever I want to say about anybody, and I'm not going to curb my tongue. So I was asked by Barry to give a very deliberative speech, a very calm speech, but you know, I know most of you here. I'm no stranger to you. You're no stranger to everything that I've been saying decade after decade. You know, this year marks my 35th year in Freeport. I was invited here by Terry Gate, who unfortunately I don't see in the audience. But Terry came and had me take care of his office for one month when he went away. And I fell in love with Freeport. It was the winter, the weather was beautiful, much cooler than Nassau. Many of you, such as Lynn, were children when I came to Freeport. And I knew their dad and their, everybody, many of the licensees here are second generation, third generation licensees. And you have something to fight for. I am grateful to a recent meeting that I had with Sir Jack and Sarah and Ian and others from the Port Authority, because they recently expressed to me how they themselves are committed to working with the licensees to uphold and protect the rights of the Port Authority and the rights of licensees under the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement. You know, as much of a pain in the ass customs is as perverse as it should be. Because one of the provisions of the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement, thank you. Well, I'm already on 3 Percocets, but because I'm going for back surgery next week. One of the challenges that I face is having played rugby in Freeport for 23 years of my 35 years. I too was very stupid and insane in doing so, and my older body now is reacting from the abuse that I subjected it to. So I'm having back operations in November and December. So I hope that they will be successful, so that I continue to work with the licensees to protecting our home. But where was I? Excursion into personnel. Oh, the Port Authority. I was saying how happy I was.
You were praising the Port Authority.
That's correct. So Jack is correct. I was praising the Port Authority. As much as I criticize them in the press, I have no brief against the Port Authority. I just goosey them now and again to wake up. Prod them every now and again. Jack doesn't need prodding. It was the St. George side that did. Edward was always the pacifist, always wanted to give in to the government, with good reason at times. So Jack always wanted to fight. And it's important to actually fight for what is yours eventually when it is being taken away. And that is what is happening. Slowly and imperceptibly, the government has been stripping Freeport of all that it is. And I'm so happy that the Port Authority is waking up to this reality and is prepared not to fight and challenge the government adversarially or confrontationally, as I don't think the licensees need to do either. I think that we need to realize that we are a partnership with the government, the Port Authority, licensees, and the resident landowners of Freeport. We are together the owners of what could be this magic city. And we should stand up for our rights. We shouldn't bend over backwards and just take it whenever the government wants to ram it, or the Port Authority for that matter. But what we should do is struggle collectively, cooperatively, to work for what is ours. And it is only when the government, the Port Authority, licensees, and the residents of Freeport all recognize the very pivotal role that each of them have to play as stakeholders in this community, that perhaps a better future for Freeport will be created. And the unification of the licensees, the recognition of the customs management regulations, and frankly, it is unfortunate, but it is a good coincidence. It is because what customs is doing now is hitting many of you deeply, deeply, deeply in your pockets, that you are perhaps waking up and recognizing that what you have may no longer exist. But I'm glad it's hitting deeply to some of you, some of the bigger licensees in particular. Because it is only when you feel the effect of what is going on that you may take action. You know, the national insurance, the case that I did for Kelly's, for Callenders, the Smith Point, when they implemented this new regulation where you had to get a letter of good standing from national insurance before they would give you a bonded letter to allow you to purchase goods. Well, on the doorstep of the trial, the day before the trial, they withdrew that letter. Next, with Kelly's, they required reports to be submitted every month before they would allow them to import any of their containers, of all the sales of bonded goods. What the hell is the sense in that? You don't pay the duty on the bonded goods at any time, so why get reports of payment of bonded goods? And it's not required under the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement. So the court dismissed that because we were out of time in filing a notice of motion by, I think, 14 days or something. It's taken us 2 years to finally get to the Court of Appeal, and last Tuesday, the Court of Appeal ruled that that was very draconian on the part of the judge to strike our action out because of that. So they ordered the national insurance case to go back to trial, and they ordered the Kelly's case to go back to trial. But case after case, I want to embolden the licensees. Case after case, every single case that has been brought over the last 20-some years, or 30-some years in Freeport, against the government, has been won. There has not been one case lost by a licensee challenging the government's intrusions or breakages of the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement. The first one was the Shangri-La case. I don't know if many of you are aware of that, but it was back in 1982. I had some foreign friends who had a sailboat, and they wanted to run sailboat excursions from their home. And I thought, what a great idea. Freeport was in the doldrums. I'd make a couple of dollars from it. They'd make more money from it. And the tourists would have something to do when they came here, as others were doing. But then I made my application to the Port Authority for a license, which was approved, but it was made subject to the Office of the Prime Minister approving. Well, as a young neophyte in Freeport, I didn't pay any attention to that. As a Bahamian, I just assumed the license would come through. Month after month after month, it didn't. So finally, I wrote and said, okay, well, I finally looked at the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement. I don't see any provision for writing to the government and asking them for approval for you, O Port Authority, to give me a license. And they wrote back and said, well, that's the practice, and that's what we've always done. We can't issue a license without central government approval. You'll have to wait. All right, waited and waited and waited. Finally, I said, okay, I'm not waiting anymore. So I sued the Port Authority and the government for a declaration that central government and the Office of the Prime Minister have no licensing jurisdiction in Freeport. Port Authority hired Sir Ralph Seligman QC and Alison Maynard Gibson, the current Attorney General, and government hired a bunch of lawyers from Barbados or somewhere. Bahamian lawyers weren't good enough at the time. But they lost, notwithstanding their crusaders on the other side. And the court, very easily, Maurice Clinton and I did the case, declared that central government has no licensing jurisdiction in Freeport. That means, and this is very important for the Port Authority, very important for the future of Freeport, that the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and I beg you, Sir Jack and Sarah, to wake up to your right and to enforce it. Central government has no business dictating, informally or formally, any license which the Grand Bahama Port Authority chooses to give. Grand Bahama Port Authority is the one-stop shop licensing authority for Freeport. And that means that any promotions, advertisement, marketing, they go out and find people to come and invest here. Like LNG. What a gift that would have been to Freeport almost 7 or 8 years ago. $1 billion of investment that was going to stick in Freeport. A 25-megawatt power station to put into the grid for Freeport. A new cruise ship terminal for Carnival and other lines. Huge flow-off investments for the rest of Freeport. That didn't happen for the sole reason that neither the F&M nor the PLP would give their approval for the license. A great shame for Freeport. And so Jack and the St. George's know of many other investments over the years that have just fallen by the wayside because the Port Authority approved them, but we couldn't get central government to sign off on them. So year after year, Freeport has been affected by central government interference. So with that case, we have the precedent, the legal precedent, that the government has no authority in Freeport. But that doesn't mean that the Port Authority should act willy-nilly and not have some relationship with the government. Of course, there should be a relationship with the government. But it has to be a relationship of mutual respect, mutual understanding, mutual appreciation, that we are working towards a better Grand Bahama. And what the government should do with the Port Authority, in my view, is to say, okay, under the Hotspur Creek Agreement, you have the authority, the right, and responsibility to run Freeport and to approve any investment. But at the same time, you have an obligation to conduct your due diligence, to make sure that they are the right people, to ensure that they have the investment capability to do so. So if you act as a good corporate citizen, a responsible regulator, we will not interfere. Now that is the relationship that should exist between the government and the Port Authority. One of mutual respect, one of behind-the-scenes chat, not the government with a noose around the Port Authority's neck, choking it every time it wishes to do something. And that is what goes on behind the scenes. And unfortunately, the Port Authority hasn't spoken out about this over the years. So many things that would have happened for many of us licensees, opportunities that would have benefited us, growth of the economy, more jobs, etc., have not happened, and the Port Authority have unfortunately remained mum because they don't want to criticize the government. But let me criticize the government for them. And let me also say, I am not retained by the Port Authority. I have not been retained by the Port Authority for 7 years. 7 years I haven't had that nice big fat retainer in my checking account. And the other day when they asked me, well, can I retain you again? I said, oh yes, you can. But I'm a QC now, it's going to cost you a lot more. So I sent them a new retainer bill. Jack and Sarah haven't responded yet. I think they just fell off their seats when they got it. But I think I prefer not to be retained by the Port Authority, because they can get new lawyers, they can do whatever they want. But it's high time that the licensees are properly represented. And I'm glad that the licensees have come to my firm. Kerry Leonard, is he in the room here? Hi, Kerry. He actually called me to remind me about my speech. So I'm glad that the Chamber instructed myself and Kerry Leonard to advise on these new customs regulations. And I hope that Callenders can build a long-term and healthy relationship with the Chamber and the licensees to protect and promote our rights while we work with the Port Authority, while we work with the government and with our employees. Let's remember, the licensees employ thousands and thousands and thousands of voters, either directly or indirectly. In fact, if Freeport has a population of, say, 60,000, I dare say, how many voters, who are the politicians in here? They're not a PLP or F&M, who know the electoral rolls. I can't see. Oh, Michael, you're here. And Barry, how many voters are there in Freeport? 30,000, 40,000? Peter, oh yeah, where's Peter? Well, Peter, you know, I didn't see you. Sorry. How many voters are here in Freeport, in Bahama? We have 25,000 voters. You know how much of an effect we can have on any government with 25,000 voters? Just like the brewery did the other day. I'm a partner in the brewery, and Jimmy Sands and I took a very deliberate decision. We will not remain open if the government continues to mess with us. We prefer to stop that business, to close it down, and to cut our losses, than to continue. But what we did was we went to our employees, all 70 of them, and we said, listen, we are a family. We want to continue to employ you, but we will not continue to lose business. We will not continue to lose money, because although all of you here are drinking Sands and High Rock and what's that, Bush Crack? Fantastic names by all these names. A good beer, which we're doing really well in Freeport, but we're not going to continue to suffer losses. In the 5 years we've been open, we made one big profit, $12,000 I think the year before, but we've got cumulative losses in the millions. And as you know, it takes years to build up a business. All of you have been involved in working businesses. But we took a decision, we went to our employees and we said, unfortunately, we will not stay open. All of you are voters. Go to your member of parliament. Go to your PLP and your FNM elected member of parliament. Go to your senators. Call your prime minister. Send emails. Go meet with them. Many of you are generals or supporters within each party. Go and let them know that very soon you will lose your job if you do not cause them to make sense and respect Freeport and roll back these illegal things that they've done. And that is what each of you licensees must do. You have some of you hundreds of employees, all of whom are voters, all of whom may have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 additional voters in their houses, in your communities. And it's high time we use our power. That's why at the beginning of this speech I said, Freeport belongs to the licensees. If we collectively take action to protect our interests, if we draw a line in the sand and tell the government, don't mess with us, respect our rights, you want people to vote for you? And the other day when Jimmy and I had a meeting with Michael Halkitis, the Minister of State responsible for the Ministry of Finance, I said, your technocrats, their job is to make money for the ministry. But I said, your job is to develop policy to get re-elected next time. I said, you PLPs were lucky on the last occasion that you got your seats in Freeport. That's because the FNM did Freeport so bad. If you guys want to get re-elected, then do right by Freeport, and next time you get all 6 seats. Sorry, Peter. But I said the PLP have an opportunity to put their money where their mouth is and to show the licensees and residents of Freeport that they mean business, that they will create jobs by working with the Port Authority and the licensees to help develop benefits, to make Freeport the best place to do business in. Not to create alternative economic zones like in Mayagwana or in West End to compete with Freeport. Why approve other developments? Why approve desecration of environments elsewhere in the Bahamas to create places that are not going to develop? Just simply tell people, you want customs benefits until the year 2054? Go to Freeport. You want to create golf courses and gated communities? Go to Freeport. We've got 6 of them that aren't open. We've got canals all over the place. We've already desecrated the swamps, the wetlands, and the environment in Freeport. There's not much left to say. And by the way, the Port Authority, don't give away Tano Beach. The west side of Tano Beach does not belong to the Port Authority. It belongs to the people of Freeport. Half of that was taken away when you opened the big red boat in about 15 years. I will not let you take the rest of the western side of Tano Beach. So don't think that you're going to put some marine mammal development program there. The west side, the next campaign for Jack is going to be take Tano back for save the days. Take Tano back. We want Tano Beach back on the west side, so don't be giving it away to anybody. I don't know if you'll remember, some of you may not, but Tano Beach used to extend from Smith Point all the way past those 3 tall, the Stone Crab, all the way west towards that jetty. And that was the whole of Tano Beach, with toilets and sidewalks and walls and everything. If you go there, it's like Planet of the Apes. When Charlton Heston visited New York with the apes, and he sees pieces of the Statue of Liberty, I invite all of you to go back behind Tano Beach on the west side, and you'll find remnants of what was there 15 years ago. It's a great architectural experience. So please do not take Tano Beach back from us. The people of Freeport need recreation spaces.
And in fact, if you want to really speak to the people of Freeport and show that you mean well for Freeport, take your tractors down there, clear it, and make it a beautiful recreation space again. Now, Sir Jack, unlike Edward, believed in recreational spaces. When I talk to Edward about creating parks, like Hyde Park or Regent's Park, etc., he says, no, Bahamians don't walk in parks. They don't eat trees. But Sir Jack knows about it. So Jack and I, despite our differences in the last fight between, the shareholders, have a clear understanding about the garden city Freeport ought to be. And I urge you, Jack, to look at Tato Beach. I'm just taking a little excursion here on behalf of the residents. Don't give away Tato Beach to any developer. We need recreation spaces. If you go down there, whenever there's a public holiday, it is chock-a-block full. There's no space to park the cars. We need recreation spaces on the beach. So we want to take Tato back, and we want you to lead the charge. Yeah. So we have strength in numbers, licensees. I'm going back to the fact that we have in our pockets thousands and thousands, 30 to 40,000 voters in our pockets. If we went back to all of them and said, okay, this is it, we can't continue to do business in this environment. In fact, what we should do is create a party called the Grand Bahamian Party, GDP. And we can do that. If the licensees could do that, the GDP. Maybe this is the day to launch the GDP. Who's with me on that? The Grand Bahamian Party. We should launch the Grand Bahamian Party, and if we could put 5 or 6 independent seats or the GDP seats in Parliament, FNM or PLP would have to recognize us, and they would have to listen to us, because we would control 5 or 6 seats in Parliament, and that way you make a coalition of any government. They would listen to you, plus a few independent seats elsewhere, and Bob's your uncle. The FNM or PLP can't just keep paying lip service to Freeporters. So it's good that you're uniting in numbers. We have the power. Freeport belongs to the licensees. The Port Authority would be nothing without licensees. The Port Authority only exists so Jack can only go on his cruises all over the world because the Port Authority licensees pay license fees. It is only because we contribute to their coffers. And I want to continue to pay Jack license fees, and I want to give him money to go on cruises. Just like I want the chamber to pay good retainers to me so I can go on cruises when I'm in his age. But the fact is, the Port Authority only exists because we pay service charges, license fees, lease fees, etc. So they need us. So it's about time we all wake up and say, okay, Port Authority, listen to us too. And the government. And this is by happy coincidence, Sir Jack is here. For many years, when the Port Authority was first created, many of you may not be aware of this. And this is why this insistence by Customs to exact every single penny it can from licensees is so perverse. There is a provision in the Hawksbill Creek Agreement that says, if the expenditure by government in governing Freeport with salaries of immigration officers, customs officers, housing for teachers, housing for customs, etc. If any public expenditure by government in the Hawksbill Creek area is not covered by income derived from customs duties or other taxes, then the Port Authority must pay the difference. Whenever it costs the government to administer and manage Freeport, has to be paid annually by the Port Authority, plus a 20%, thank you, Jack, plus a 20% administration fee. So from day one, so Jack annually used to receive a report from the government and monitor what the expenses were. Every year, the government made money, lo and behold. They never, from 1955, the government of the Bahamas has never lost a penny in managing Freeport. Instead, to this day, what they make is nearly $150 to $200 million in taxes from us, even though we're a free port. This is unimaginable. That we are the goose laying the golden egg for them every year, and they still want to, mess with us. This is insane that Hubert Ingram or Perry Christie or the ministers or the bureaucracy in the Ministry of Finance can't come to their senses and understand understand what an opportunity there is. This could be a win-win-win for everybody. Win for the licensees, win for the Port Authority, win for the government. But no, we have to be negative, we have to be confrontational, we have to be abusive, we have to punish each other, we have to hound people for their bonded vehicles. What nonsense is this? That I should use my bonded vehicle to take my kid to school. So what? Or my wife goes to the grocery store. So what? Is it really cause for customs to come and forfeit my car? For goodness sake, grow up! Government, grow up, customs. Stop being childish, perverse, and stupid. That's my message to you guys. So, it's, 150 to 200 million a year we generate. Customs duties, stamp duties, corporate fees, national insurance taxes, recording charges, corporate taxes. Work permits are getting $10 million a year. Thank you, Jack. But what's happening is the Port Authority is no longer even getting the annual report from the government. They are hiding from the Port Authority what the Freeport pays. Now I think a line should be drawn in the sand by the Chamber of Commerce, and I think the Chamber should formally write to the government and say, listen, we would like an annual report. In fact, we want a monthly report about how much you're making in Freeport. We want to know where you're deriving your income. Thank you, Tiffany. Because we have a right to know. Because we, the licensees, and our thousands of employees, are the ones that are every year making money for the government. I mean, you travel to Nassau now, you see the beautiful, they have curb, Jack, Sarah and Jack, pay attention, please. There are curbing machines. They know how, Ian here, they know how to make curbs in Nassau now. Why don't you all hire that same company or buy a curbing machine so you all stop wasting the licensees' money by building those silly curbs that everybody runs over and breaks up all the time. And while I'm at it, when you build a roundabout, finish it. Don't leave it half finished. Make it so that we have pride in our community, so it looks nice, so there's landscaping around it, and we can proudly drive our way and say, this is an example of how things are done nicely in Freeport. Please finish that roundabout at Vallejo and Sunrise. It looks like very amateurish. So we want to know where the money is being made in Freeport for the government. And it's important that we have a right to know. You know, Save the Bays, I'm going to put a plug in for my environmental organization. Save the Bays. Joe Darble is here and Sarah Kirkby. Save the Bays is committed to a Freedom of Information Act. That is our right to know. In a democracy, we have a right to know what our government is up to. And it's no official secret. There's no big reason why we shouldn't know how much money is made by the government. This is an experiment in creating an economic free zone for the Bahamas. If we make it successful, it perhaps could be repeated elsewhere in the Bahamas. But if we don't know what's going on, we don't have the ability to sensibly contribute to the debate. We're all in the dark, and everybody's trying to extract as much as they can. The Port Authority just taking as much as it can, license fees and service charges, etc. Government extracting as much as it can in taxes. Licensees working feverishly to make a big buck because things may not be there tomorrow. So everybody is working the wrong direction. We should always be working. We should be working positively, cooperatively, and we can only do that if we know what's going on, if we have the information. So please, sign up, savethebays.org. Sarah, is it on the internet? Yes. Pay attention as well, please. savethebays.org, and please sign the petition to promote a Freedom of Information Act. That way, we would know what's going on. In fact, many of you have a lot of friends or family members in the past, especially a lot of you white foreign folks that are here, who had non-Bahamian friends and family as original licensees. You might want to get into the immigration files and see what kind of abuse your past family members were subjected to you. You have a right to know what happened. Those files will all be made open by a Freedom of Information Act. They're not official secrets. They don't go to national security of the Bahamas. Going back to taxes, we have a right as licensees to know how much we generate, how much we contribute to the coffers. That's why I was talking about Nassau. If you go to Nassau now, they have beautiful curves, they have landscaping everywhere. Freeport's beauty and beautiful infrastructure is paling into insignificance compared to Nassau. I actually enjoy being in Nassau these days. They have sidewalks everywhere, running paths, trees everywhere, grass. It's a beautiful place to go. It's very picturesque. When I came to Freeport 35 years ago, I was shocked. I didn't know Freeport existed. And I went to the International Building where Terry Gate was located, and there were elevators that worked. Air conditioning worked. Terry drove me around in his Chevrolet Caprice on these dual carriageways. The Gaia Service Company had 250 employees. They had a landscaping place where they were growing all kinds of trees. They were replanting everywhere. Freeport was really a beautiful place, Jack. Congratulations to the Port Authority at that time. And there's a reason that it collapsed. And that happened in the early 80s because the government came up with exchange control first, and then the Immovable Property Acquisition by Foreign Persons Act. And just as Freeport was about to boom again with the Danes, the Spaniards, the Italians, the Canadians, there was a tremendous influx of positive investment into Freeport at that time. And there were a lot of projects on the books, a lot of beautiful, Dave Shamara was there, I used to see all these little constructions by the architects, a lot on the plans. Princess was selling 9 to 10 million a year. Tamarind was even selling property. There was a big boost in Freeport's economy. And lo and behold, they said that, what's his name? Anthony Hanna Sr., at the time Minister of Finance, responsible for exchange control. I remember Edward and Sir Jack coming to me and saying they went down to meet with him about all their applications that were just sitting around. And it was almost a matter of a joke. He would say, oh, you see that table over there? All those stacks of Freeport applications. I'm simply not dealing with them. And many of the lawyers here, Kirk and others, Chris Cafferata, there are very few lawyers from way back then. But everything was stymied. You couldn't buy a condominium, you couldn't buy a piece of property. Everything came to a grinding halt. And what was perverse about that was at the time that they were changing their immigration policy and making all the realtors, they were refusing all the foreign work permits for realtors and making the Bahamians the realtors. And so for the first time, most of the realty companies, the real estate companies, were owned and operated by Bahamians, but they couldn't sell any land because they weren't allowing any foreigners to buy. So it was a very perverse situation. So at that time, Freeport collapsed, and that's when, I think in 1983 or 84, Edward and Jack decided, well, there's no sense in wasting our time with this government anymore. What we're going to do is we're just going to close shop. And at that time, they terminated almost 800 employees that ran the Gaia Service Company, GD Service Company, their real estate development companies. They had hundreds of employees that administered Freeport. If you had a license at the bazaar, at the International Bazaar that said you could only sell goods from Spain, if you sold anything that didn't come from Spain, that Port Authority inspector would be there the next day to stop you selling, or to make sure you're playing music from Spain, or from London, or from Denmark, or from France, or whatever it was. The International Bazaar was a true international bazaar. And the Port Authority enforced everything. The Port Authority maintained Freeport. They respected the rights of licensees. They promoted their rights. They beautified the place. It was really a beautiful, and I came to Freeport only after the boom. Past the bend or break speeches when I came to Freeport. Before that, Freeport was booming. I don't know how many of you were here back in those days. But in the early 80s, Freeport was about to launch again. And the PLP killed it with the Immovable Property Foreign Persons Acquisition Act and exchange control. And that is when the Port Authority gave up the ghost, and Jack and Edward would spend many, many months out of the Bahamas. They fired over 800 employees, or terminated them, gave them their packages, and they collapsed the administration of the governance of Freeport as a local authority. And I don't blame them, frankly, because the government was not allowing them to be the one-stop shop opportunity for investment. And it was killing Freeport and everybody else trying to make development here. So we have to stand up for our rights. And I think it is a good political environment to do that, because now each successive government recognizes that if they don't cater to the electorate, if they don't do right, if they don't perform, they're likely to be out the next 5 years. Thankfully, all the governments are being controlled by the electorate. We in Freeport have an even better opportunity to control our governments. If we stand up for our rights, recognize how many voters are in our pocket, continue to come together and unite to promote our rights. If the Port Authority works with us as well, If we persuade the government by cooperation that we should work together, there is no limit to where we can go. We can really have a humming environment. I attribute much of Freeport's inability to grow to the continued interference by government. There is nowhere else in the Bahamas that the government interferes as much as it does in Freeport. And it doesn't interfere in an educated or informed basis. It simply wants to extract more money. And it wants to end the Port Authority's management of Freeport. Because it's what you fear and do not know, you simply fight against. And that's unfortunately the government's position. They have no idea of how Freeport operates. But we all do. This is our home. We have created our businesses here. Our children have grown up at the schools. We have painstakingly sweat, blood, sweat and tears in Freeport to create this community that we have. And I know that I haven't spoken about the details of the customs management regulations, but all of you have the opinion. I'm not going to sit here and give a speech about it. All of the new taxes that the government seeks to impose under the Customs Management Act are illegal. The only one that might not be illegal is the customs attendance fee. That's a payment for a service. Although, for the record, when we get to court, I am not admitting that. That simply is an advice that I gave. It is really unfortunate that you all published my opinion for the government to have when I made some reservations. But be that as it may, I'll find a way around it. So, all of you look at the opinion. We have a great case. We've won every single case against the government over the last 30 years. Not one case that we lost. And we are on solid ground. So I urge you to stick together, to come together, to fight this case, to stay together after this case, and to fight all the other battles that we'll have to fight. I hope that I work with the Port Authority. I urge the Port Authority to work with us, to unite with us, and for us to collaboratively go to the government and say, listen, we want to work with you, because your objective is to better the lives of the 60,000 people, Bahamians living in Freeport. We can help you do that. If we all work together, we can make a better future for Freeport. Thank you, Larry. I mean, see what you like. Thank you all.